Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PC Gamer Show for March 6th, 2019. The grind continues. And it continues in a good way this week because we're going to be talking about the Division 2 Open Beta, which is the precursor to the actual game coming out in like a week or two, I think. We'll be talking about our review of Devil and personal impressions of Devil May Cry 5. And we'll be talking about what we think are the best podcast games, the best kind of games you can turn your brain off to and just play mindlessly. Joining me today to discuss these fine PC gaming topics is Wes Fenlon, our features editor.
Hello. I am here. I'm excited to talk about Devil May Cry 5, which involves little to no grinding.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I mean, except for like grinding faces into the ground.
Paste.
Pretty regularly, yeah.
Also joining us is Chris Livingston, our staff writer. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing good. Ready to talk about the Division, which does have some grinding.
Ooh. Interesting juxtaposition here. But before we do any of that, let's start with the highlights of the week. And the highlights of the week are just general gaming highlights. Anything in the last week in PC gaming from things we played in the news or noticed that grabbed our attention we think are worth sharing with all of you. So,
James, I feel like this segment really needs like either a drum intro or maybe like kind of a sad like bugle, like a
You're absolutely right, and I have one of these stream decks that I have to reset now that I've messed up and reconfigured my entire streaming setup. But I want to get a good soundboard going so I can, and maybe commission, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Some sound bites to introduce each segment because that sounds like fun to me. Train our listeners like dogs.
I want that bugle that sounds like it's clearly the 19-year-old like new recruit at the in the army who can kind of play the bugle and you think he's gonna get it for a second and then it just goes off pitch. And
couple pure notes before his lips fall apart and
you tried.
Else, yeah.
You tried.
Who thinks their highlight is worth highlighting first? Fight, go. Okay, Wes wins. Wes wins.
I give up.
Okay. Last night I played Little Monster Hunter, which I haven't played in about 2 weeks. They finished the big holiday annual. I guess it wasn't a holiday. It was like an annual celebration event for the 1-year anniversary of the game back in January, and I think that ran into mid-February, February 20th or something like that.
Yeah.
So the past 2 weeks, there hasn't really been much going on. But the current event quest in the game is fighting the arch-tempered version of one of the elder dragons that you fight kind of towards the end of the campaign. So the tiering in Monster Hunter World is you do low rank, then you graduate up to high rank. Those monsters are tougher. And then you fight the Elder Dragons, which are like the toughest monsters of the high rank monsters. Then you can fight tempered versions of monsters, which are basically the regular versions, but amped up with more health. They do more damage, etc. And then there's the arch tempered versions, which are even tougher, and they actually have like a couple new moves in their arsenal to throw at you. And even if you've crafted like the best armor available in the game at this point, you can still get your ass kicked by these guys unless you know what you're doing. And Kushala Daora is, I don't want to say the hardest of the elder dragons, but probably the most annoying because she's this big wind monster that puts up like tornadoes basically all over the place when you're trying to fight her, and they make it so hard to just see what you're doing to get close because they'll just blow you back when you try to go in. So if you're playing melee, which is most of the classes in Monster Hunter World, most of the weapons, it can be a real pain in the ass. And so a friend and I decided to try this fight, see if we could take her on. Invited, some random people into the game to help us, and pretty much got our asses kicked 3 times in a row. Got wiped, got our squad wiped. On the 4th try, we started out somewhat promising. We had like a couple of people who were, I think, both bow users, or like one bow and one bow gun. So we're doing pretty good. We like start off putting some bombs on her, and then they're hitting her from afar. And then when we're kind of getting done with like the first phase of the fight, two of our people wipe. The two
Oh, boy.
randos who we invited both wipe. Actually, I think only one of them wiped, and then they both quit. They didn't
Cool.
join together, but one death, and they were both like, well, clearly we can't come back from this. So they both quit on us.
Oh, no.
And my friend and I managed to, for the next 25 minutes, do the rest of the fight, the two of us, and take her down, and ended up with a win, and got some nice pieces of monster body to use and to craft armor and stuff.
Nice work.
So yeah, we were like pretty sure we couldn't do it, but I'm stubborn, and when people quit like that, it just makes me want to see it through. And what do you know? It worked out. We did it.
Those big, as frustrating as that kind of stuff can be, it is worth the payoff, especially in a game like Monster Hunter that is so mechanically sound. If you're failing, it's usually pretty evident why, because a big limb or tornado, threw you across the room. So I'm still personally, I've yet to get to the arch-tempered layer of that game, but every time you talk about it, Wes, it suddenly snaps back how much I love that game, and I gotta catch up before. Gosh, what is it? Iceborne is the expansion.
Yeah, coming out, I think in the fall this year.
Yeah.
I don't think they've really given a specific time frame, but I think
Yeah.
it's the fall. Well, I don't especially recommend this fight because it's more pain in the ass than it is fun, honestly, when like there's an entire wall of just like gray swirling air. Like the last 5 minutes of the fight was me with a melee weapon, like trying to land hits, and my friend with a bow gun just going, where is it? I can't see it. I'm like, it's right on top of me. It's right. Just shoot at me and you'll see it. And like, couldn't see dick all for half the fight, but we managed to somehow close it out.
Congrats. I'm very proud of you.
I was proud of myself. Thank you.
Chris, what's your highlight of the week?
My highlight of the week is suddenly remembering, oh yeah, I really like city building games. Why aren't I playing like 3 different city building games all the time? So yeah, this week I played 3 different city building games. And it's great. It's just like I'll sit down and be like, oh, I'll work on this city, I'll work on this city, I'll work on this city.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I kind of forgot that I enjoy them so much, but it's just been such a nice week, like just to fire one up here and there for a few hours, and they're all kind of different. So yeah, the 3 I've been playing. One is called Foundation. It's a medieval city building game. It's in early access on Steam. It's I would say pretty early access, and like only really took a couple days to kind of unlock everything available. You can still grow and grow and grow, and it's a kind of a free form. There's no grids. You kind of just put stuff where you want, and it's got this little nice thing that I've seen in a few other city building games where you don't really build roads. It's just if you have buildings here and here, and then your villagers walk back and forth between them, they'll eventually like wear a path in the grass.
I feel like that would have blown my mind when I was playing like Warcraft 2 back in the day.
For sure.
It's still kind of fascinating to me. Like I just like to watch it happen. And there's another early access. Actually, it's an alpha. It's not on Steam. It's called Ostriv, Ostriv. It's an 18th century city building game. I haven't written it up yet. I'm gonna have something up either tomorrow or Friday. But it's really good. It's an alpha. It's designed by one guy. This guy, Ukrainian game developer, just kind of has been working on it, I think, for several years in his spare time. And that's another, it's free form also. There's no grids. It's the same thing where your streets and roads will form just because people will walk them. And I'm not too far into that one yet, but it's definitely challenging because from what I found, like these people will not put up with any shit from you. Like if they're unhappy, they're just gonna walk straight away from your city somewhere else, and they're like, "See ya." So seasons are very important in this game. There's a lot of farming and fishing, and like in the winter, the river will freeze, so you're not doing any fishing, and you have to rotate your crops. And obviously it gets cold, and if people don't have nice warm houses. They're like, well, see ya, good luck with your shitty city, asshole. And they just kind of leave, like, unceremoniously.
Where are they gonna find a better house, a warmer house? They're just gonna freeze to death out there, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are on the world map. There are a couple other cities. I guess they're headed for them because there's like you can.
Otherwise, that's a really dramatic way to make a point. Just like I would rather die out in the forest than
rather than maybe
town.
Sleep on my neighbor's couch for a few months. I'm just gonna make a beeline out of your city and so long, sucker. So I'll have something written up about that because I think it does a lot of really cool things, and I really can't wait to see it be complete because it's very cool. And the third one I played the last couple of days, which I wrote about today on the site, is called Dawn of Man, and this is a Stone Age city building. It's a Stone Age to the Iron Age. So basically, you start with like a couple of very primitive people sitting in loincloths with not really anything. They got like some sticks and some rocks, and you kind of you build them tents, and they have them hunt animals, and eventually start making better tools and introduce them into farming. And like that one took a little while to grow me because it's a bit I don't know. I like very. It's pleasing in a city building game when your city looks really pretty, and this is obviously people living in the dirt with tents made out of dead animal skin. So it's not like, ooh, wow, I unlock this tent where I can keep grain. Ooh, flashy. It's very, it's not the most eye-catching game out there, but I've been enjoying it. It's fun. It does feel kind of great when you actually get them to the next level of technology, as opposed to like, oh, this, in this city builder, this skyscraper gets taller or looks like a bigger building. This is more like, oh, instead of, just scooping up mud with their hands from the river, they're actually having like tools, and even just getting them like a sledge so they can pull a log around instead of carrying it on their shoulders. It's like, yay, like I feel like I'm actually making progress.
So it sounds like it adds a little more depth to what is pretty automated in a lot of RTS games, city builder games, where like, oh yeah, you build the woodshed and then they chop wood and that's how you get wood. Like it seems like there's a little more progression there.
Yeah, it's more like a, I don't know, kind of a mental satisfaction, like, oh, thank God, they have clothing, it's just like, it's just a night, or like, just even just like, I've got several different kinds of crops now. So they're not just eating fish, they're actually like cultivating grain and things. And it just feels, I don't know, there's an extra bit of satisfaction from some kind of modern day thing where you're just going from, a tech tree you're already kind of like technologically advanced already just by playing a modern day game, but this is like, oh, it's actual discovery of actual technology. So it's kind of cool. And there's every now and then a bear will run into your camp and just maul a child, and it's just sort of like, oh, that happened. That's happening. I had a little kid get struck by lightning and killed.
Oh,
whoa,
lovely.
I shouldn't laugh. I guess it's terrible, but I was just so surprised. It was like, oh, a storm is coming. I'm like, well, I live out in the woods. What do you want me to do about it? What am I supposed to do? Like, thanks for letting me know. I can see that it's raining, but then there was
the lightning rod, Chris. Come on.
I guess that'll need to be on the list.
More years at least, yeah.
So did all these city builders come out in the past week or two?
Foundation went into early access in February. I think it may have been around an alpha before it. It's one of those games where it's like, oh, this seems new, and then you see people who seem to have been playing it for a really long time. So I think it may have been some sort of alpha or something beforehand. Did we lose Wes? Okay.
Oh gosh.
Dawn of Man came out this week, and it's not in early access, which is always surprising. I was like, oh, it's a game that's not in early access. Yeah, they came out on, I think, on Monday. And Ostrov has been around in alpha for several years. So
sorry, I just encountered the Discord bug where if you mute your microphone to sneeze, for example, it disconnects you from the call.
Perfect, lovely.
Yes,
but I'm
it
back.
happens to me too.
Is it?
Ostriv reminded me of a city builder or a sim that came out like it's probably been about almost 4 or 5 years now, that I remember us writing about. That it wasn't called Besiege because that was the like crazy
Weird craft.
contraption game, but
Right.
it started with a B. Do you remember the game I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know. It's
I remember us writing about it.
Banished. Yes.
Banished, yeah, that was supposed to be pretty good, right? How would you compare it if you played Banished?
I didn't play Banished. I do see a lot of people comparing Ostriv and some of these other games to Banished. It's like I should probably play it since it's been around for years, and I do like city builders.
I think that was similar in that only it was either like a single game, a single developer game, or like a very small team.
Yeah. But yeah, I would. I wish I had written Ostriv before now, but I'll have it up this week, and I think it does some pretty cool, interesting stuff, and very impressive. I don't know. I'm always impressed when like one person just makes the whole game by themselves.
Yeah.
But this feels especially kind of cool. So.
Right on. It's a nice city builder update. Thanks, Chris. I'll just run through my highlight real quick because it is extremely simple. It's tax return season, and so Daddy got a new 2080. 2080. A new 2080.
A Twin 80.
A Twin 80. And now Daddy can play Metro Exodus as it was meant to be played, and can hit Apex Legends frame rates above 120 frames a second.
What?
Yeah,
Nice.
It's been my last card was a 980, so this is a significant step up and feels pretty darn good, especially because I've been struggling to hit decent frame rates on this 2560 1440 monitor for quite some time, and now
decent to you is like you mean 144.
Yeah, it's yes. I mean, like I am one of those people now. I'm not ashamed to say, but
you gotta get those wins.
60 feels bad to me now. 60 frames feels bad, and now like I sometimes I have a PlayStation 4 and I will occasionally boot up Spider-Man or something because there are those annoying exclusives, Bloodborne and such, and even on a PS4 Pro, those games are struggling to hit 60 frames, and it is a nightmare. So I like 30 frames I'm hearing about for Anthem on console and such like that. I can't. I'm an elitist now. I don't know what to say. I'm an elitist now. My 2080 is ruining me, has ruined me, will continue to ruin me forever. That's okay.
Yeah, 30 FPS these days
it's pretty bad.
It makes me sad.
It's pretty, especially because, and we're going to be talking about it in a bit, but Devil May Cry, it deserves to be seen as fluidly as possible. So I'm happy about my purchase. But before we get to Devil May Cry, let's move on to let's move on to the Division 2. So the Division 2 open beta happened over the weekend. Chris, you played an obscene amount of it, something like 12 hours. Is that right?
Yeah, I was surprised everyone was like, wow, you played 12 hours. I'm like, is that a lot? Does that seem like a lot for a weekend?
I don't know. But in that 12 hours, you opened or closed, I forget which, many car doors. So you are, it's kind of hard to debate what kind of authority you have.
Like 38 or something?
Yeah, it was like, I realized after the beta, I was looking at screenshots and stuff, and the gloves actually track how many times you close a car door. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't know that when the beta started, because I would have just been grinding out car door closings.
Wait, hold on now. Is this per pair of gloves? Doors closed per gloves? You have?
That's a good question. I don't know. I assumed it was any glove to use any car door, but they wouldn't reset your car door.
Like where did this stat? I saw your screenshot, but I didn't like
when you
to where it is, what it is connected to.
When you start the game, you pick the agent you want to play with if you have multiple of them, and it just, as you mouse wheel down, it'll go like, oh, this is your gun, this is your gloves, these are your knee pads, and it'll give you some stat about them. So I don't know, maybe they do. It would seem harsh to reset. I don't think I've worn the same pair of gloves long enough to have close that many corridors. It must be a cumulative stat, but I'm not sure. We'll have to check it
what
out.
a fascinating and unexpected gear trade-off that would be, where you're like, shit, I'm at like 195 doors closed with these gloves. I can't leave them behind. I can't upgrade to these slightly better gloves.
Yeah.
Gloves and car doors aside.
I guess I did play a lot. I played 12 hours. So I did not play. I think 12 hours is probably about as much as I played with the first division. So maybe that's looking like a compliment to the Division 2 that I played that much in a weekend. I enjoyed a lot of it. Weirdly, like, I enjoyed everything except doing the stuff you're supposed to do. Like,
missions, it's like a great endorsement.
Missions. Like, I don't know how I found them so exhausting. Those missions, they just would go on and on and on. You know, you fight your way into a building, and then through the building, and then through the next floor of the building, and then there's a boss taunting you, and then you get to the boss, and then after you beat the boss, you gotta fight your way back out. And it was like, there was one of those missions, it just was going on and on and on. And I was just so exhausted, and it was so not engaging to me because it was the same type of fight over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this is a small sample size. This is a beta. There were only, I think, 5 real story missions in there, but I was already kind of tired of them by the time the beta was done.
Were you playing with people in them, or just kind of soloing through those?
I would occasionally, like, there's now a feature where you can sort of request backup, or you'll get a request for backup as you're doing something. I'll say, agent request backup, and then you respond to it, and you kind of fast travel to whoever that is if they're in the middle of a mission. So I did some of it with strangers and some of it on my own. And I'm just not built, I think, for those long ass missions. Like, I really enjoy, I guess what I mainly did was like the Radiant missions, which is supposed to be, I guess, the stuff to keep you busy when you're out of regular missions, but just kind of running around the city and hearing gunshots and checking it out. Or, you know, they have the bad guys get these supply drops, like these big crates land in the street, and they're trying to open them, and you're trying to stop them and also take what they're trying to take. And there's like hostage situations, and there's NPCs who kind of walk around trying to find supplies, and you can just, it's not even a mission, you can just follow them, and they seem to be aware that you're helping them, and you can actually physically help them by gathering stuff and giving it to them. It's kind of like an escort mission that's not on the books. It's just like,
that's cool.
Okay. Yeah, I like, and I was like kind of charmed by that they're like, my assumption was, they're just it says it, you know, when you run into someone, it'll give you a little thing on your screen saying what they're doing, like looking for food or patrolling or looking for water. And I saw these people looking for food. It's like, well, they're probably not really looking for food. They're just wandering in circles. But they actually like went to a place where there's food and like slowly gathered it and then came back with it in a bucket. So it was like, I like when like NPCs actually do shit, if there's that they're not just kind of, I don't know. You know, if you follow a car around in Grand Theft Auto or something, it's just going to go in circles. The guy's not actually going anywhere. So it's kind of nice to see like that they have a little routine, and you can kind of join them without it being like your mission is to help them get food. It's just like you can go and help them.
A big UI prompt, and
it's not like it's maybe there. I don't think it tracks it. It's just something you can do. Yeah.
Gather potatoes.
So I found that kind of stuff more fun because it didn't take as long, and like one thing I noticed on one of these missions, the mission was to get the Declaration of Independence. Okay.
Okay, what is this?
Just
that
national
like
treasure.
Significant.
Just one of those little missions. Hey, you know, can you go, you know, well, hey, can you go rescue someone? Oh, can you go, you know, find the stash of technology? Oh, hey, can you go pick up the Declaration of Independence?
Not a political game. Not a political game, by the way. It's not.
Bring it back here.
Not political. What the fuck? Why? In this like post-apocalypse scenario, like,
yeah, what are you gonna do?
Isn't
Are
it
you gonna just burn it? It's like a fire
There's
starter?
probably a copy somewhere. Maybe.
Well,
in every gift shop.
It's, I guess, an inspirational thing to.
Oh.
You're trying to take back DC from the factions of vague murderers who are taking it over. So it's just hey, we've got the Declaration of Independence. We're gonna save the country. Rah rah.
Does it need to be the original, or can it be like a laminated, like tablecloth?
There's a lot of gift shops around.
Placemat version of the Declaration that surely you can find in DC.
I'm pretty sure they want the original. I think that's probably important.
Okay, one more. We'll move off this because we can. But what is the story here, Chris? Can you explain who the bad guys are and what they want? Because I think we tried to decode this for quite a while.
Yeah, no, I don't know what they want. The city or the country basically collapsed with the money virus, dollar virus, whatever it's called, in the division. Yeah. And DC, I guess they tried to fight it with some sort of chemical that turned out to also be very horrible for people. And I know one of the factions are people who are quarantined and got really angry about it and now are going around killing everybody.
Okay.
There's the True Sons, which is they're very angry too, and I don't know. I guess they're very radical. They run at you with suicide vests on, so I think they've got some sort of weird ideology. And the others are the Hyenas, which just seem like armed. They just seem like an armed gang.
They're just like the rioters of the last game.
Yeah, I guess they're like.
Yeah.
And then the Black Tusk, which are I guess a military faction or contractors or something that come in at the end of the campaign. I don't know what they want.
Anyway, sorry, big diversion, but
I can't imagine. I'm just trying to picture myself caring about a single thing any person in the Division 2 says, any bit of story or dialogue, and I just cannot fathom how it could play out in a way of my expectations. Maybe this is an unfair assumption, but in my head, my vision of that game, there is no single line of dialogue in that game where I would be like, oh, I'm invested in this now. I care about what you're saying. It just seems so flat.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird too, just some of the choices. Your base of operations is the White House. It's the actual White House, which sounds really cool. That okay, we're going to take back DC, or our headquarters will be the White House. It sends a message, but you literally get to the White House in the first 5 minutes, and it's just okay, I'm in the White House, and then it's just this place you go when you need to get do crafting, and there's no impact whatsoever about being in the White House. And I just wonder why is it literally the first thing you do, and it doesn't take any kind of effort. If it was maybe a third of the way through the game, you've been say working out of some tents or some little destroyed building, and you have to fight your way to the White House and room by room take it back. I could see that being maybe something not really significant, but a big set piece type of thing.
Yeah. And
instead it's just hey, you're in the White House. I don't know. It's just weird. It's just kind of a weird. I already feel the identity of DC is not anywhere near as strong as Manhattan was. Maybe that's just because I don't know.
I think I'm.
Maybe
with
that's
you
just
overall.
how it is. Yeah, it looks great, but I don't feel any kind of here I am in DC. Like Manhattan. Part of it was probably this sort of wintry Christmas. I've been in Manhattan in the winter during Christmas, and it's got this feel to it, and here it is, destroyed and ravaged, and so maybe that sparks something. But DC in the summer, I've been to DC in the summer, it's just hot.
It's just gross. It's just gross.
It's not fun.
It just sucks.
Yeah.
Well, maybe once you get the Declaration of Independence, you'll find a secret code that unlocks the hidden bunker underneath the White House. And
no, I got the Declaration of Independence, and nothing happened. I think you can go look at it, but I can't figure out where they put it. I can't see it.
They really valued it, clearly.
Yeah.
Neato.
One thing I'm curious about is, having not really played I've played a little bit of the first division, but what's the AI like in this game? Like, are they enemies that kind of just sit there and soak up your bullets, or will they actually do like cool flanking stuff? Or like, is the combat interesting?
They're pretty mobile. They will move around from cover to cover. They will try to flank you, and you can usually tell that because they'll yell, "I'm flanking him," which I kind of appreciate
Yeah, sure.
because sometimes I don't notice, and it's nice to know. They also
It's one of those silly video game things, but
they
yeah.
announce when they're going to throw grenades, so you can shoot them, so they drop them and blow up. So yeah, I mean they're pretty active. There are some pretty tough bosses who, like, if they rushed you, the boss would just kill you. So he kind of slowly rushes you, which is nice. You have a chance to fall back and kind of reposition and heal up and stuff like that. So there, you know, at times they'll like at times they'll jump around. Like they'll, if it's a multi-level thing, you'll have a guy cornered and he'll go like jump off the edge, which is pretty cool. Or throw a grenade and he'll, rappel down, or like they are pretty squirrely. They can be pretty hard to pin down sometimes because you don't want to really run around in the open because you'll get shot to hell. So some of them are pretty mobile and they're pretty active, and they are, they can be kind of tricky to corner and take out. So
That's encouraging.
I wouldn't say it's like fantastic AI, but they at least don't just sit there waiting for you to kill them. They actually do seem to.
And I will say, like, I think overall it's like less about clever AI and more about, because a lot of combats, the more difficult like combat encounters will be these wide open areas with like Chris was saying, multiple levels and all sorts of cover that are clearly designed for you to like look at where the enemies are pouring in from, and with your team of 4, like sort of plan flanking maneuvers to like sort of put a pinch on those positions. And I think the combat really comes into its own, at least for the Division 1 in the end game, especially after all of it. It got all like 2 years worth of updates or something like that. And coming into the Division 2 open beta, it's sort of picking up right where that system left off. And I think some of the abilities and class weapons are really like point to, it's again, this is all early game stuff, but those point to really interesting, more complex combat scenarios that also have like one foot in the Destiny 2 like Diablo numbers game. So I think what's there, I don't know, Chris, like I really enjoyed the Division 1 as just like a dumb campaign, like to play with friends, a fun cover shooter. But I think like Tim Clark, our Destiny 2 fanatic who has thousands of hours in that series, found it like 2 years later after I got all these endgame updates and combat updates, and really sunk his teeth into that back end, the numbers game, specking out all that, creating different broken builds and playing some of that end game stuff. So I think hopefully, like it seems to me that the Division 2 will walk that line pretty nicely. I enjoyed like the relatively simple cover shooting of what's there in the demo, even if it is a little bit like, we've been doing sort of the same thing since Gears of War. It is pretty streamlined and feels good enough. Sorry.
Maybe you haven't played enough to say, but how would you compare it to Anthem so far?
Oh God,
combat wise or otherwise.
Combat wise, I don't know. Like I think Anthem's combat is just like gosh, it's bad. It's very bad. It's it's a blank. It's like firing a blank. It's just this really amazing movement system. We've talked about this at length. In these incredible bodies with these cool abilities, and the enemies are just bugs you squash, and they don't really have any. There's no real sense of them moving or working together in a coordinated way or pushing against you in specific ways. It's just like, I'm squatting this bug, squatting this bug, squatting this. Whereas the Division 2, or Division at least, is like, you have these like bespoke combat arenas where you can feel a developer. It's it's got the chest high wall syndrome, where you can see immediately all of the convenient cover and bookcases and whatever else tipped over to kind of mark your routes, possible cover routes through an arena, and where the enemies could also potentially come from. So it's like, I think it is immediately more engaging on a simpler level. You're maybe not playing it like you're not a robot with jetpack legs, but it's more empowering and more challenging, I think, on the spot and moment to moment.
Maybe that'll be the first expansion for the Division 2.
It's just Anthem now.
Now you're a robot now.
But I had a really cool, I don't know, Chris, what class did you choose? Because mine, I forget the name of them. Mine had this badass foam gun. He just shoots this big burst of quickly expanding foam that
the chem launcher.
Yeah, the chem launcher, and it just and sticks enemies in place in this big bundle of starchy looking nonsense. It's really satisfying to use, even though in the early game, the enemies die so quickly that there's no use for it. Maybe on bosses or something. But
no, I see that being super useful to glue a bunch of dudes in one spot and have someone else just wipe them out with one of their
for sure
special abilities or bombs or bombardier drones or whatever they are. I mostly went with the armor healing drone.
Oh, cool.
Which is nice. It follows you around and heals your armor, though makes it very noticeable because enemies will be like, there's a drone, and start shooting at you. And just the roller mine, which I still kind of enjoy. It's very basic, but
it's got a cool animation. I just like throwing that thing out and watching it sort of careen towards tight corners.
Is it like a bomb chew from Zelda?
Essentially, except it can turn corners and operate.
Go over railings.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
I did like that because I'm not like Tim. I'm not the spreadsheet guy, figuring out the best combinations of gear. But they added something called brands, which it kind of makes it a bit simpler for someone like me. Where if you have 3 items of the same brand, if you have a same brand of glove and holster and knee pad or whatever, it'll give you the series of bonuses if you have all 3. Which is nice, though. I don't have to really stare at the numbers quite as much. I can go, oh, I know I have these 2 items of this brand, and here's a 3rd one. So I'm getting something out of them. I'm getting, extra critical hit chance or extra health or whatever. So it kind of, I think, makes it a little easier for someone like me I don't have the patience to kind of scrutinize every bit of loot, especially since you're leveling up and then you're looking immediately to replace every single thing that you own or are wearing. So it makes it nicer, and I think it gives you kind of the chance to hang on to certain things longer than you might normally, because even if it's a level lower than you are, you might still want those bonuses. So
true.
That was kind of
true. Cool. Yeah, I don't know. Any closing thoughts on your time with it so far? I know it's coming out. Gosh, is it the 14th, 17th? I'm forgetting.
I think it's the 15th.
15th. Well,
I think it's next week.
So end of next week.
Yeah.
Are you excited? Less excited than?
I want to see the whole city. In the beta we were confined to just, I think, 2 little districts.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see if it kind of gets more of an identity when the whole thing is opened up. And it's kind of interesting because they made this. They're saying it's basically a 1-to-1 recreation of Washington D.C.
Really,
and I guess there's usually shortcuts and sort of amalgamations of things in games like this that kind of compress it into something smaller. So I'm curious to see is it worth it to do a real 1-to-1? Is that going to make a difference to me? Do I really care that maybe they cut a few corners, or maybe they should have? Maybe having a really completely accurate version of a city isn't really necessary. So I'm curious to see how that is. I'm curious to see if I can stick with a looter shooter game like this, because typically it's not my thing. But I did really like the settlement kind of activities. There's a little settlement of citizens that you help them out with various missions, and I'd like to see how that progresses. And like, it's nice to feel like something is changing in the city as opposed to the thing just being like this static, almost MMO thing where you just go out and shoot things, but nothing ever actually changes. So it would be interesting to see what happens when that settlement's fully upgraded and you've got all the control points and stuff like that. So looking forward.
I'm really worried about Abe. I want to know how his statue's doing. How's the
Yeah,
National Mall.
You know,
Did
there's
you
going to
go there in
be
the beta?
there's going to
someone
be
spray painted something on it, I'm sure.
there's going to be like a set piece mission at every single monument. It's going to be like we gotta. There's going to vandalize the ape statue. The panthers or what are they? Hyenas. They're gonna
break his head off.
They're pissed off that they're, I don't know, the apocalypse happened, so they're gonna ruin the statue. It's up to you, Clancy guy. There's gonna be one where you go up the Washington Monument. What other monuments are there? Nothing, I guess.
I think that's it in the whole city.
There's two. There's two.
Also, I should say in those 12 hours, I found exactly one cosmetic item after opening. I don't know how many suitcases, and it was a neck warmer. So it's a
good color at least,
but it's summer, right?
Yeah, it's summer. Plus, it's like I can't think of anything smaller than a neck warmer except for maybe a wristband or a shoelace. I mean, what is this? And it was brown, so it was like
cool.
Interesting cosmetic thing. I could have thought. I would not have ever guessed. Oh, neck warmer.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I really want to do a follow up to the piece I read about the first game about the Division having a fashion problem, and from the sound of it, it's still going to have a fashion problem.
It's just hard. It's just hard to stack up against a sci-fi or fantasy game. Like
for sure.
My pretty much most of my exposure to Destiny 2 is Tim posting pictures of some new gun he found and how excited he is about it. I'm like, I can see it. It looks really cool. I just can't imagine like posting a picture of anything I found in the Division. Like, hey, here's this gun. It's gun shaped.
I feel like
it looks like a gun.
Ubisoft should have had the whoever did all the like character costume designs for Watch Dogs 2 do all of that for the Division. Just like bring them in and just have everybody should just look like some weird San Francisco like hipster, dialed to 15. Just like everybody's wearing weird like zebra t-shirts and short shorts and has like crazy sunglasses and just let it be done.
I'm almost positive like they would, but it's probably some kind of Clancyverse stipulation that says no, this must be joyless. How dare you?
Has there ever been a silly Tom Clancy game? I guess not.
No. Well, like the Hawks games were kind of. I never played them. They looked goofy. Those Graw games. No, those were like they made the.
Those were very straight face.
Really,
I think. Yeah.
There's nothing really that.
Rainbow Six Vegas, like maybe at the most, because it's in Vegas. Woo.
Yeah, it's in Vegas. That place is silly, huh? Anyway. Here's some people shooting each other in tactical gear. But yeah, Division 2. We'll be covering the hell out of that game, I'm sure, when it comes out next week. I think people who order a special version, someone in chat is saying, let's see, I forgot who said that. Yeah, CJ Stuck said 12th version for the 12th is when people with a gold edition can play it, and the 15th for standard. So another game doing that, incentivizing paying more to play early.
You can call it bullshit, James.
It's bullshit. Don't buy into that stuff. That's you're the guinea pigs for launch. I don't recall Ubisoft having many problems with online games at launch, but let's don't pre-order. Let's move on to the next topic at hand, from something grim and sad and grindy to something that's like totally the opposite. Devil May Cry 5 is very good, and our review is up. It's coming out this Friday, I believe, right? For everyone to play. And Wes and I have both been playing a lot of this.
Yeah, so I just got to, I feel like I'm probably like 2/3 of the way through the game or so. I just got to actually playing as Dante.
Gotcha.
So you can tell me how far I am, or we can let that be vague. Maybe I've got more to go than I think I do.
You do.
But there's a lot of really good shit in this game. Like
Yeah.
basically every moment of it is ridiculous in the best possible way.
I'm with you, Wes. It's, gosh, well, you open up with, I don't recall any of this story really from the previous games other than that demons and Dante has a brother named Virgil, and then Nero shows up and wacky shit happens in this weird earth demon dimension, and it's cool looking. But you open up with Nero, you immediately or shortly after like fight a building size
god demon.
Oh yeah, that guy. I forget you fight a god demon. Shortly after you fight like this ogre with a mouth on its distended belly that spews out lava from a void, apparently.
He has several mouths.
Several
eyes, I think.
Several eyes. And from there it just keeps going. It keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And it's not just, for me, the fact that it's ridiculous as hell that keeps me on board. It's that this is probably like the apex of character action so far, I think, because you have 3 different characters with 3 unique combo systems and move sets, and within those systems and move sets, they have multiple weapons. Like Dante has he has like several guns, 4 guns, something like that, 4 weapons. V is probably the weirdest one, which we can talk about in a sec, but Nero has this arm system, the Devil Trigger, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Interchangeable, disposable arms, consumable arms that have.
And there's at least
abilities.
like 8 different ones. Like there's a bunch.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's even a Mega Man. What's his gun called? The Mega Buster.
Mega Buster.
Yeah. If you get the deluxe edition or something like that, some stuff's hidden behind the deluxe edition, but it's so complex, and I'm very close to the end. I think something like 14 hours in, and I'm still unlocking new abilities and still kind of like figuring out how to use each character or chain combos and in surprising ways. It's totally bonkers. What's your experience been with it so far, the combat system and such?
So I think this is going to be, since I haven't played as Dante yet, I'm really eager to see how they implemented him compared to previous games where I guess in DMC4 you played as Nero for a good chunk of the game, but prior to that, like DMC3, which is probably most people's favorite in the series, kind of regarded as like that's where they made the battle system just so intricate, so well tuned, right? That game, Dante just by himself has these different styles that you can switch between on the fly and like do so many different moves with just him, and it kind of feels like they've broken some of that stuff out to the different characters. You know, V has his totally unique play style. Nero kind of feels like a mirror version of Dante where like he still has a sword and a gun, but he plays a little differently and focuses more on like the grapple move with the arm and then all the different devil triggers. So I'm curious how in-depth Dante is by himself, because I haven't played far enough yet, because I was a little surprised going into the beginning of the game playing as Nero, starting to unlock some new moves, and like they're actually pretty light on just melee combos.
Yes.
Like you can unlock a few tiers of increased melee combos where you tap. If you're using a controller, you tap like Y twice and then pause and then like tap it a bunch of times, or you just hit it 4 times in a row or whatever. And like those trigger different attacks. But I think most of the complexity, at least for Nero, actually comes from mixing melee attacks, gun attacks, grapple attacks, devil triggers, rather than there being that much complexity in just how the melee works by itself.
Yeah.
And that kind of surprised me at first. And maybe some kind of character action purists might find that a little disappointing, but then maybe that's what Dante is for, and I just haven't played
He
enough as Dante.
absolutely is. Like, and I
Okay.
don't want to give away specifically like the stuff you unlock with him, because it's sort of a joy and surprising, like the weapons you find. But some of them are so funny. But he has 4 stances that change what the B button does, and basically his active role in combat. One is a gunslinger, which gives you an extra weapon move, gun move, excuse me. There's sword slinger, I think, which is gives you another combo move for your sword. There's a defense move, which allows you to block certain moves, and there's a I forget what it's called, trickster move, which gives you a new host of dodging abilities.
So a lot like DMC3 sounds like.
Yeah. So it's pretty familiar, but the weapons, like the 4 primary weapons and the 4 primary guns you get on top of that, and the combos between them, it's kind of mind-boggling, the potential there. And you can between each mission, you can kind of customize your loadout, so you can arrange the order of how you switch between them. Like, so you can keep these 2 weapons next to each other, so when you tap L or R, you can set up certain combos much easier, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of like depth. I think Dante is going to be one of the deeper characters that classic longtime fans and more hardcore players will really dig into. Yeah, like
That's
I said,
cool to hear.
Nero is like much more about aggression and I think keeping everything near him, like making the battle come to you, whereas Dante's about darting all around and staying in the air for 10 minutes.
And Nero's fun too. Like,
yes,
I could play that whole game as Nero and enjoy
good.
it. But that was like the thing that stuck out to me the most from what I've played so far, thinking about, okay, how does DMC5 compare to Bayonetta, which is probably most people's like the game they hold up as like the pinnacle of these character action games. I would say the first Bayonetta for a lot of people would be that. And it's been a long time since I've played Bayonetta. I think you've played it more recently.
Yep,
but
sure.
My recollection of Bayonetta is just insane a number of combos.
Yeah.
And like, I don't remember if it had light and heavy attacks or if it was the gun attacks, but it was basically, okay, you've got 3 buttons for attacks and like, dozens of variations of if you hit XXY or XXYY or XYXY or whatever. And like, those are all going to do some distinct thing. And it was actually too much for me. Like, I didn't enjoy that as much as I enjoyed back at the same time as Bayonetta came out, or around the same time, Ninja Gaiden 2, which was a much less combo focused game. And it was more about switching the different weapons and then mastering your implementation of those weapons rather than knowing like 6 button combo strings. But Bayonetta is still super fun, and I was a little surprised that DMC5 didn't have quite that depth of combos. But I think the answer is that most of that stuff is in Dante, and Nero and V just have very different play styles in comparison.
Definitely. Yeah, I think especially V, like the purpose of these characters is like breaking out the play styles and like sort of within something as complex as Bayonetta into these broader archetypes, that and these literal characters who animate differently, and it's just like it's about the variety in that regard, and the fact, I think, like hardcore players will be, you maybe don't have as deep a combo system for one character specifically, but you have 3 characters to basically master, 3 different challenges that play so differently and feel just as good.
I mean, even without his combos, like Nero, the fact that he has all these different devil trigger options, and the way you can arrange those in a match, and like when you use them, if you get hit, they're destroyed, or you can purposefully destroy them to do like a special ability of that devil trigger. There's so much depth just in those arms. Like there's one that electrocutes enemies, but then I think at the same one, if you destroy it, it turns into a bomb, that like a ticking time bomb that you plant on enemies. There's one that's just like a super move that like you can like choke an enemy out to death with it, but it makes you vulnerable. There's like a one that shoots you like charging forward, kind of a rocket jump move. There's one that like dilates time in a specific area where you shoot it. There's one that can like drill through multiple enemies. Like there's so many different arms, and you could play the game completely differently with just Nero based on how you equip which of those arms you equip.
Yeah, and it makes that pretty easy too. You can kind of choose.
Kind of ridiculous.
Like I said, in the between or before missions, you can equip the order of your, I don't know what they call it, the magazine of what devil triggers you have equipped, and what order you'll go through them, and that's pretty cool. I do want to talk about V though, because V is the most jarring character to play as for me, because
he's a summoner who looks like he was in an emo rock band.
I love V's look.
2004.
I feel like I knew V in high school. Just this morose, kind of lanky guy with long black hair, sunken eyes, and all black.
Some sick tats though.
Yeah, some sick tats. And rather than like directly, V's weapon, so to speak, is like a cane, and his mind, the power of reading, literally, because V summons this giant crow monster that sort of acts as a remote gun, you might say, and this big panther. Is it a leopard? Is it a panther? Is that what those are?
It's a panther.
Panther. That sort of acts as a remote melee companion. So it's almost like controlling two remote Dantes or Neros or something, where one is embodied the crow's embodied as the gun, the panther as the melee combos, and you're, rather than like right up in the face of people, you're sort of managing these battles from the back and stepping back and sort of like sending the crow over here to poke away at this guy with a couple dives or bullets, or like this electrical explosion that sends anyway, and or the panther is kind of keeping this big guy busy over here, or you're focusing them all down, and you can summon this giant behemoth from the sky that you can piggyback on top of and ride around and smash shit.
My favorite bit is that you can hold down a button to read your like demonology textbook in the middle of the battle, and that like charges up basically your super meter faster. And the character reads it, like you hold the button down and he pulls it open, and then he starts just reading this like enchantment about like
darkness.
We are cursed to walk the earth forever, or whatever. Like I don't remember.
It's so good. It's so good. It's so silly, and it's so different. It's I'm still figuring out how to use V in interesting ways, and I appreciate that variety so much.
As much as I'm loving the combat in the game, I'm honestly just enjoying the setting and the characters. So I guess more than I expected, honestly. And like, it's just been such a long time since I played DMC3, and I think I only played the demo of DMC4, and I don't remember it having quite so much panache. Maybe it did, but like this game is just stupid in the best way from the very beginning, and completely knows knows the tone it's going for and nails it. Like the opening credits is you, Nero, riding in the van with your like mechanic friend, jumping out the window, and then there's like a 2-minute slow-mo sequence of the van like doing cartwheels while Nero is just like shooting enemies in slow motion and like crazy poses, while the like the names of the developers kind of pass in the kind of 2D text sliding across the screen. Like it's just so stylish in the way that certain action movies manage to pull off, but I feel like most games, for whatever reason in this genre, are like too self-serious. I don't know. This one is not. This one knows how goofy it is, and the characters are always wisecracking but are actually funny. And they've just put so much work into animations that they didn't need to
Yeah.
make it just to be funny, to add personality. Like I was saying in our Slack chat the other day, probably my favorite thing about this game is in every level you get to a, like, kind of right before the boss, there'll be a telephone booth of some kind where you call in to your friend to come, like, bring the van, and then you can, like, do upgrades or whatever, right? Every telephone booth is different. Sometimes it's like kind of a red, like, it's like a Doctor Who looking booth,
Yeah.
or it's like a destroyed, like, subway phone, payphone or whatever. uh the animation for each one is, or almost everyone is unique, like the way they put money into it, or like the camera angle of them holding the phone. And then the entrance of the van is always
Oh,
different,
funny.
and it's usually just like drops out of the sky or comes like crashing through a wall, or just like something absurd. And in most games, that would just be like there's a character standing there that you can buy some shit from.
Mhm.
But in this game, it's like we're gonna dedicate a 1 minute animation in this one level that we did totally unique for this sequence, just so some dumb shit can happen and you can laugh at it.
Yeah, do not skip the phones. Please do not. Even if you don't need to upgrade anything, just press A on that and watch it go down, because it's hilarious. And I really enjoy it. I'm forgetting her name, the driver.
Nico, sorry.
Nico, yeah.
Nico
She's
and
a
Nero.
charming, funny, like, redneck sounding character. You just can somehow summon a van in the roots of a demonic tree. Somehow, it's incredible.
Yeah, she's just like, no problem. He's like,
Hey
can you
there.
get up here? No problem.
He's great. So it's interesting. I mean, clearly we like this game a lot. We think it's some of the best variety in the genre ever. I think it looks amazing. And I should note that, like, the PC performance for me was amazing. It was great. Like,
so it's the same engine as Resident Evil
yes,
2.
the
It's
RE
the
engine.
RE engine. So same engine as RE7, I guess, which I think is really interesting. If you think about, like, okay, look at Unity or Unreal. Obviously, those are used for really wide range of games, different types of games. But I feel like in-house engines are rarely this malleable. Like, we've heard stories about, like, how difficult it was, for example, for BioWare to adapt Frostbite to Dragon Age, where it's normally used for DICE's games for Battlefield and stuff. And, like, obviously they did it. It was feasible. But it's fascinating to look at this game and look at RE2, which came out, within a month and a half of each other, and how wildly different they are to control, and the design of, areas, and just how they work. And they both run really, really well, and feel like, if you told me that they built this engine just for Devil May Cry, I would believe it, because the game feels so good and looks so good that I would think, oh yeah, this is totally like a bespoke thing. But
Definitely.
no, it's an engine they made for a first-person Resident Evil game a few years ago.
It bodes well. I would hope. This might be a naive to hope for, but if they've got it working on the PC like this with Resident Evil 7, I remember working pretty well, RE2, and this game, then, and the backed by, I think, the recent story from a Japanese, Capcom's Japanese site, I forget who, but one of their executives underlined the importance of getting games on the PC, and the PC as a valid platform. So that makes me very happy, and seeing it, I didn't expect it to see Devil May Cry, in its traditional form ever again, and especially this sharp on PC, and it's just it's incredible. It's a very nice moment for me personally, at least. Real quickly, I do want to ask, like, do you miss Ninja Theory's DMC? Do you think anything was lost in moving away from that?
So I know that's a big sore spot for a lot of fans who didn't think, like, oh, this isn't the real Dante, don't like the character reboot, and a lot of people didn't like the combat either. I never played it, actually.
Oh,
so
really?
But you've played it, right? So I think you need to answer this question.
Oh, Wes, okay, you got to go back and play that. I think all DMC players should give it a try because, I love DMC5, but I sort of miss the hokey satire of the real world and its social political problems as seen through or as translated by the weird demonic lighthearted, grimdark, never quite self-serious filter that Devil May Cry is sort of known for, and they did it very well. There was the weird plant making a soda that the masses drank, and it was actually, I don't remember exactly, it's been a while, but it was actually some goop from a demon, and there was a boss that was a news anchor or TV personality. You basically fought a giant TV at one point. So
okay.
Giant
TVs and Demon Pepsi.
Yeah, right? So I miss that, and I would love to see, because DMC5 shows that can be funny and lighthearted, and I think they do the combat better as much as I think it was fun in Ninja Theories. I would love to see that a melding of those two, and because the one weak spot for me in DMC5 is just the setting is sort of samey and not too distinct. It's fine and sometimes very surreal and strange in a way that it feels like levels made with the PS2's limited memory, but
with nice graphics
expressed in expressed with incredible graphics and better art design, and that's a really special, unique feeling. I like that. I don't think everyone will, but anyway, I don't know. I would just like to see. I don't know. I want DMC to return to sort of social satire because I think it did it very well. But hey, if it doesn't, that's fine too. But I do miss that.
I've heard either the definitive edition or director's cut. I forget the name of DMC. I think DMC Devil May Cry added some refined the combat in a way that I think a lot of people were like, "Yo, this is actually really good. Everybody should play this." So
it's pretty good. It's basically without spending too much time, but you have two sort of combat styles expressed by which trigger you're holding. So holding one trigger whips at makes every button press start a combo with an axe, while holding the other button has a much faster, more fluid, icy combo set, and it's really easy to switch between the two. But it's also sort of limited in that regard because basically just two as opposed to DMC5's 1,000 different combat styles.
Well, now that DMC5 has sort of established going forward, I feel assuming the series does go forward, it's going to be about multiple playable characters.
Yeah.
Why not bring in other Dante? Why not just have it's crazy and weird enough for them to do that. They would barely even need to justify it. They would just be you're my alternate universe twin. What the hell? Or Sparta had another kid. Just do some weird crossover shit. It would be funny.
I would love for a dumb canon excuse to rope that in. Anyway,
or make him a boss or something. I don't know.
That'd be great. But gosh, we're running over here. Do you think we have time for this podcast discussion, or should we table that?
Yeah, let's do it real quick.
Yeah, we won't spend too much time on it. But in the wake of games like Crackdown 3, which came out, sorry, my OBS interface is going haywire here. Came out 2 weeks ago, a week ago. Feels like a long time ago. Feels like it's always been
a month ago. Who knows?
Been forgotten. But we had Sean Prescott, one of our Australian editors, wrote a nice piece on how he likes Crackdown because it demands nothing of him. It's sort of the perfect podcast game. I don't know. That's sort of the modern nomenclature, I think, for a game like this. And it got me thinking, yeah, with all these games as a service and all these games that demand attention and demand you at least talking to people or paying attention because it's battle royale, and if you miss one audio cue, you're done for. What are the simple games that maybe at first might demand some attention, or from the outset, like Crackdown 3, are just all about running around and jumping higher, collecting tiny orbs to jump higher? What are the ideal podcast games that you can put a TV show onto, you can put a podcast onto, you can have a conversation with the person in the room with you, and play without missing out on much?
I feel like Chris is the perfect person to answer this because he just hates like any characters talking in games.
It's true. I'm always happy to like tune out anyone talking to me in a game. Well, I think, I was talking about city builders earlier. I think those are probably ideal games because, they do require your attention, but it's rare that you're in some, real crisis where it's like, hold on, I got to make sure, this grocery store gets built. It's, they can be really challenging, but I think for the most part, you're kind of looking around your city and, making adjustments and keeping up on things, but it's not something that's going to require, a laser-like focus. I think it's probably a great, there's often such kind of chill out games or something you just want to decompress with. So I think city builders would be a great thing to listen to podcasts or music or something with it. I'd also say a game like the more recent Far Cry games. Once you're done with the story and the real missions, if you enjoy the sandboxiness, it's so loosey-goosey as it is. Like, oh, okay, I'll spawn a helicopter and I'll fast travel here and I'll go looking for those things that I never found, or I'll collecting animal skins, or I'll go do some skydiving challenges, or whatever the open world icon harvesting missions are. Those games are like, it doesn't matter really if you die. It's just, oh, I'm dead. Okay, I'll just respawn another helicopter. And so I think those are fun for, it's kind of like that GTA thing where you're not going to do any missions or story. You're just going to run around and blow things up.
Yeah. I feel like the new Ghost Recon, the newest Ghost Recon also fits into that same.
Ghost Recon. Which one was that?
Wildlands?
Oh, absolutely.
It's been a couple years, but it's just like a giant sandbox where you can just, like you say, I just made it, called in a helicopter, and then I'm going to just ride this over across the map and just go cause some mayhem.
Yeah, there's a kind of mindlessness to some of those games, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, just in the time to starting to getting into crazy combat and things blowing up is very short, and there's really no consequence of messing up when you're just kind of screwing around. So I think those would be good for listening to stuff while you're playing.
I'm with you. Wes, what are your favorite
podcasts? So I put down Total War, which is a series in which, like, I don't know, pick your favorite Total War game. I feel like this would apply to pretty much any of them. You don't need to be able to hear anything on the overworld map where you're just doing the strategy layer stuff. That's kind of like any turn-based strategy game. These games last for dozens of hours, so you could really crank through some hardcore history podcasts, learn about the history of war in the Middle Ages while playing medieval Total War or something. And when you get into combat, you could keep listening to your podcast if you are in an easy fight, or occasionally you might need to pause and really focus. But I think that's
in the scope of a Total War game. Like, there will be hours between some combat encounters. So you'll have time.
Yeah, between like the ones where you're like, shit, I'm gonna really need to try to win this one because I'm outnumbered 3-1 or whatever. One that I've played before while just less listening to podcasts, but actually just doing like second screen, like having my laptop open or watching TV or something, are Dragon Quest games. The new one on PC, Dragon Quest 11, is an extremely long game, and it does have a lot of dialogue and cutscenes and like fun music and stuff like that. But it also will have stretches where you can just decide, like, yeah, I'm just going to go fight a bunch of stuff, or I'm going to go do this side quest or whatever. And you could just be playing combat, doing combat, and running around the overworld for a solid couple hours and not need to pay attention to anything. It has an auto battle feature built in that you're supposed to use for random battles. Like, it is not a game that demands you be actively paying attention to pressing the attack button over and over again for basic fights. It lets you configure an auto battler and just let your party go at it. So I spent a lot of that time letting my party, while I was playing that game, just fight for themselves, and then I would like get to a boss fight or like a tough fight, and I'd go, okay, I got to take control.
How do I play again?
give you some commands real quick.
Yeah, right on. Good choices.
What about you, James?
I've got a big list here, and some of them have caveats, but I'm just gonna run through them. Hitman 2, well, the Hitman series in general, I think once you've kind of done your first run and you've soaked in, I think, how those levels work, it's a lot of fun to experiment within them. And Sam Roberts and Phil Savage, our UK colleagues, had a big leaderboard battle for a long time and spent dozens of hours playing that game. I haven't played that much yet, but I think it's the perfect kind of game you just put on and experiment in that sandbox. In the same regard, I think Metal Gear Solid 5.
But then you miss the cassette tapes.
Well,
the draw
again, the caveat being, like, once you've sort of finished up the main story, or it's, you can kind of just go in and poke at outposts at your leisure and do a lot of those side quests and side missions. But do press pause for the cassette tapes. Do press pause. Also, DMC 5, excuse me. I think once you finish the story, our reviewer, Tom Sr., said he hopped right back in. And once you've seen everything, the story's pretty thin as it is. It's not like, the greatest drama ever written. But once you're done, you just want to get back in there with the filled out combat system for each character and play around on higher difficulties, try and get better high scores. I think that's a...
What's your medal of choice for DMC5?
Medal of choice. Well, what's amazing, sorry, sidetrack, if you get the deluxe edition, you can change the battle music for each character individually, and you get to select from like a host of tracks from the series past, which is just great because there's some hokey ass, cheesy ass metal in those games. I'm very happy to report there's some good music in these games. I know at the Game Awards everyone was upset, like when that live rendition of I'm forgetting the title track was performed, but I was so into that shit, and I'm into that shit now. As for the go-to metal, Street Sex is like a sex, not sex. Get your minds out of the gutter. Is this like kind of industrial loud? It jives with the DMC sound very well. Anyway, my final two are... Sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, what about like some Hall & Oates as a counterpoint?
I hope someone mods in the ability to just use that the existing DMC like music selection tool and just put in whatever you want. Please, someone do that, because Hall & Oates, gosh, anytime a battle kicks off, I'd be into that. My last two, Sniper Elite 4. Most of those Sniper Elite games are just kind of big dumb sandboxes where you try to shoot people from far away without getting caught. I don't remember a damn thing about the narrative in those games, but it seems like you can just kind of idly run through some trial and error in that series. And Just Cause, of course, I think we mentioned that. Just big dumb sandbox games. I think are great. The Saints Row series. Excuse me.
I gotta imagine like Euro Truck Simulator would be the prime.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's mainly when I listen to podcasts, is if I drive somewhere, and that's pretty much what you do. So,
well, gosh, I wrote a story 3 years ago, maybe now. God, about there are bespoke like radio stations and DJs who host shows specifically for these radio stations that you can tune into in Euro Truck Sim games. A little tangential to podcasts, but like that just goes to show how dedicated or how much of a need there is for something to do while you're driving around. Some good podcast games out there. I think it's just important to underline, and this again came out in like the wake of the Crackdown reviews. Like most of them were pretty poor because I think it didn't really push the series forward. but that doesn't invalidate all of these games necessarily. There's still plenty you can enjoy idly, and as simple as it might be, or as complex as it might be, because we've got a big old spread here between City Builders and Total War and Crackdown. All of them give you some downtime to just listen and do something else. But let's move on to our Q&A. Do we have time? Yeah, we have time for a couple questions. We got it in. We packed it in. We did it. We always highlight questions from our club users first. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to club.pcgamer.com to find out more. It's basically a small subscription service, pretty cheap, that supports us directly. Gets you an ad-free experience on the site. Gets you an invite to our private Discord where you can contact me directly. Why are we doing this? Digital subscription to the magazine. Free game each month.
Beautiful Tub Geralt in 4K.
Beautiful Tub Geralt in 4K. I've been dropping that one off the list, whenever I go through this lately, and I got to remember to keep that back on. But yeah, you get 4K Tub Geralt. And a host of other treats, as they stumble into our laps. If we get like beta keys to a game, we'll throw them at you guys first if we can. Also, gosh, there's a giveaway channel in there, and I swear it's busier than ever. There's like 3 code giveaways, community supported, at least a day now. Some pretty cool people in there too, even though some of them won't stop trolling me. You're welcome to too for $5.
That's what makes them cool.
I guess so. I love them all. They're great people. Yeah, club questions first. If you have questions in chat, just tag PC Gamer. If we have time, we'll get to them, but we're running a bit tight here. Janrin, thank you for the question, Janrin. We're getting close to 2020. Oh my God. So it's time to think about a new game of the decennium. And yes, we looked it up before the show, and it is a word. Decade. Means decade. What games from 2010 until 2019, the present day, would you place as candidates? And I did a big brain search. Is that what they call thinking? Brain searching?
That's what brain searchers call it.
For games that came over the last 10 years, and I know there's going to be gaps in the answers we come up with because that's a lot of games to consider. But let's just get a couple. What comes to you guys when you think of the last decade in games? What as some of the best candidates?
Are we talking about like the best games or the biggest influences or what is? I don't know. What are we just saying? Like our favorites?
It's tough, right? I'm just going to go with like a general best.
You're going to go with Fortnite, right?
No, I like it a lot, but I've got a couple here that aren't Fortnite. I said Fortnite. Oops, self-promoting. The qualifications, I don't want to get too into the weeds with that, but like, if you have a reason, if it's because it's your favorite, if it's because it was so influential, we'll just hear the reason and let it slide. Chris, Wes?
Gosh, I mean, kind of I found myself really locked up thinking of this question. I was like,
Same.
I don't know. Fallout New Vegas was 2010, which I think is a wonderful RPG. I kind of feel like I would go with what game will I probably play again and again, like the rest of my life. Probably like would have no problem jumping back in, and it would be something like Skyrim or Fallout New Vegas. Dishonored, I think, was wonderful. I'm sure there are bigger, probably more important games, but I tend to think of like the kind of game that like made me happy then would make me happy now, that I could just lose another week to completely blissfully. And so yeah, it would be something like your Skyrims or your Dishonored or New Vegas. Yeah, my vote. Portal.
The ones that popped into my head immediately were FTL and Into the Breach.
Yeah.
Spelunky, The Witcher 3, and then outside the PC, Zelda Breath of the Wild. We put all those on there. And stealing one from your list, James, if we're talking about like influential, decade defining, like Dark Souls is the answer.
Yeah. It's just in my mind now because Sekiro is nigh. You just put a preview up today, I should say, of some of the early games. So go check that out at PCGamer.com. We got like 12 minutes of new footage, and there's some weird stuff in there that really excites me. And
some stuff about how it is and is not like Dark Souls.
Yes,
which is
exactly. Cool. It's going to be a fascinating game. But yeah, can't ignore a Souls game, in my opinion. The Souls series as a whole, I guess. But for me, personally, I think Gone Home, it's like you said, Chris, it's like not the kind of thing I would play today or could play forever, but I think as a relic, and it's sort of a timeless one if you're not too worried about texture resolution 10 years from now, it's just a great story. It's a great little personal story, and I think a genre defining game, right? Otherwise, personal picks: Portal 2, Portal. Well, the original Portal was much earlier, so it doesn't count. But
yeah,
Portal 2 for me, just because I can return to it and enjoy it over and over, especially with all the
co-op
weird mods.
is so good.
Co-op, incredible. The ping system for Apex. And another personal pick is VVV. I just think it's an incredible platformer. Simple, beautiful. It's totally my aesthetic. One we should mention is, I think, Spelunky too.
Did I not say Spelunky?
Did you say Spelunky? Did I miss it?
Yeah,
I might have skipped over it a little bit.
Oh, shit. Well, Spelunky as again, one of those that sort of kicked off cavalcade of new roguelikes and such. But yeah, there's a lot there, and we're missing stuff. The Witcher 3, shit, I don't know. There's so many good games. It's going to be interesting.
I said The Witcher 3 too.
Did you? God damn it! What am I doing?
Listen to me, James.
Of course,
listen to me.
It's snowing outside, and I'm getting concerned. I keep glancing over it, so I'm kind of spacing out every now and then. It snowed last week, and my power went out, and I was stuck in my house for 2 days. So I'm getting a little nervous. Maybe I'm just blanking you guys out. I apologize. Let's run through some more questions real quick. We got a couple more. Ardoff, how you feeling? Feeling good?
Yeah.
I have heartburn.
Oh, fuck.
Oh.
Damn. Wow.
I'm gonna go see that Apollo 11 documentary in IMAX tonight because
that's
apparently
tight.
it's the last night that it was a 1 week IMAX run. So I'm like, oh, all right, I'm gonna go see that then.
Hell yeah.
Real spaceships.
I love real spaceships. Also fake spaceships, but also real. And everything in between. I'm feeling all right. Nervous now because of snow. A perfectly legitimate doctor asks, what's Anthem's best-selling point and worst flaw? Selling point and worst flaw.
I think the selling point is that flying is really cool. The worst flaw is you don't really fly and fight. Like, when I think of being Iron Man, I don't really think about hovering in place and just shooting things down, which he does do that, and that's cool, and it's fine in Anthem. But I just, with this world with all those like valleys and kind of caves you fly through and all these cliffs and stuff, like how much fun would it be to chase another like armored bad guy in a suit through all those valleys while like shooting missiles and shooting guns and like some real dog fighting stuff? Like,
I would love it.
I don't know. I guess I was kind of disappointed that while you're flying, you don't really do all that much, and it would just be cool to chase something across that entire map and through these caverns and waterfalls and stuff to actually be actively in combat while you're doing all that traveling around. It just seems like really cool, and not feel so much like you're going from to this specific point on the map to fight, but to have fights that take place, as you're traveling across the map. I just think that would be pretty sweet.
I'm with you there.
I'm sure there's probably bigger flaws. I guess it's not a flaw.
There's a lot of flaws.
It's just something that's not in the game that I was like, oh, kind of sucks.
I know, right? No, I'm totally with you. I was expecting it 100%. Just the way the flight system is built and the controls you have. You can like spin, you can barrel roll and like sort of.
And sometimes you kind of are a little chased by something and you can kind of dodge like those birds that shoot at you. But it would be, I think, fun to. Maybe that would be a PvP thing, chasing other people around, right? And there's no PvP. Anyway,
real quickly for me, I think you have like 100 people to talk to in Fort Tarsus, and none of them have anything interesting to say. Almost none of them. They're crazy. Some guy just like literally every time you walk by, he's supposed to be their funny character. He's like, I didn't know earwax was supposed to be that color or something. I don't know I can't remember what he says, but it's just anyway. And Wes, you didn't really play it, did you?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Let's see if we get this last question in, then we'll call it a day. Mildoz, if you could see any, Mildoz asks, if you could see any established franchise developer studio strike out on their own, away from their current franchises and producing companies, which and what game, I guess, would you wish for them to create? And the example Mildoz gave me was Bungie kind of leaving Activision, and well, they're not making a new game necessarily, but if they were to, what would you hope they made? And Chris, you've got an answer listed here.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. I guess I was at QuakeCon. I think it was either QuakeCon or E3 or something, but it was wherever it was when I think Quake Champions was announced. Or it might have been I was just talking to Tim Willits at QuakeCon or something. And I just had this thought, like, because Tim's been to every single QuakeCon for the past 20 odd years. And like in a way, it's really wonderful that, id Software, they do Doom games, they do Quake games, and they're this legacy. At the same time, like, every time they announce another game, I'm like that's great, but like, wouldn't you want to do something like completely else once in a while? Like, maybe, I mean, it'd probably be a terrible idea. You should probably do the things you're great at, and they're pretty damn great at shooters. But I don't know. You just maybe I'm just too like every few like throughout my life, every like 10 years, I'll just like leave a career and try a different career, and maybe that's probably a terrible idea because I don't ever get anywhere. But like, it would just be kind of neat to see them do something completely different, some completely out of left field.
I feel you.
Yeah. And they're obviously super talented at what they do, but it would be cool to see them give their take on some entirely different genre.
I'm with you.
I would like to see Naughty Dog go independent and just make either the kinds of games they already make or something very different for them, selfishly, so that it can come to PC, so they can be on different platforms. Or like, I don't know, what's Naughty Dog making a game for a Nintendo platform look like? Like they I don't know how many of the people who worked on Jak and Daxter are still at Naughty Dog, but not all of their games have been these weighty, super emotional, raw violence, stories, their entire history of that studio. I imagine some of those people are still there, and some of the people working on The Last of Us right now probably would love after that to have kind of a palate cleanser of something a little less serious, right?
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to see a kind of unshackled Naughty Dog just doing something new.
Good call. For me, my answer, oh gosh, I don't know. Because I don't know who is at Retro Studios anymore. But I would love to see at least like a Metroid Prime era peak Retro Studios break away from Nintendo. And they're not really owned by Nintendo. They're just, I think unless I'm mistaken, but do something on their own that is in the vein, or at least aesthetic vein, of just their own sci-fi game. That
James, this happened and it was Recore.
Oh fuck! That was terrible. I forgot about that. I reviewed that shit. I hated it. Never mind. I rescind my answer. Oh man.
Granted, it was not the whole studio. It was just some of the key devs left.
That's true.
To form Armature. And
that's true.
Have had not the best luck since then. Of recreating that Metroid magic.
Yeah. Again, that felt like a game that just was unfinished and had promise, but the classic video game problem of running out of money and time and having to get something out. A bummer, but
sorry to rain on your parade.
It's okay. I needed that. It sobered me up quite a bit. Enough to end the show because we are out of time. We're running over a bit. Just real quick for everyone, you can always catch the PC Gamer Show at 1 p.m. at twitch.tv/PCGamer every 1 p.m. every Wednesday Pacific time at twitch.tv/PCGamer, or after the fact at youtube.com/PCGamer. You can go to pcgamer.com/tag/podcast to find our archive of shows and our RSS feed that has or links to our Spotify, Google Play feeds as well. You can find us on there now. We're still getting the iTunes. It's an annoying, terrible process, but it's going to happen. I promise you. Be patient. It'll happen. But if not, we do have an RSS feed that you can just manually subscribe to within the iTunes podcast app, or any podcast app for that matter. So we're technically still there. It's just we can't search us in the store. And yeah, that's going to do it for us. It's going to do it for us this week on the PC Gamer Show. Thanks for joining me, as always, you two. Lovely chatting. And until next week, never forget to, Wes?
Game on.
Game on, everybody. All right, see you.
I'm glad you didn't ask me because I didn't remember what you were supposed to say.
I'll never ask you, Chris.